The Futurians, time-traveling terrorists of the 22nd century, create a terrifying three-headed beast to remove Godzilla from time, after they failed to erase him from history. Sadly, fate destined King Ghidorah to perish to the newly reinvigorated Godzilla, which begs the question, what if the effects of time travel were not arbitrary, and Godzilla was truly erased from time itself, allowing King Ghidorah Heisei to turn good? Well, as we've seen in the first 3 parts, which I would highly recommend you checking out as this is the finale, things did not work out well for the Futurians, who inadvertently erased themselves from time. That is, except for Emmy and M11. The former explores the future, while the latter is in the present along with the Mickey from the original timeline and the current timeline Mickey. The Mickeys have done their best to safeguard Japan from known threats, though their ability to assist at this point is a bit lacking. Not due to will or devotion to the cause, it's primarily due to outside factors. Well, for one, their psychic gifts have mostly faded by what is now the year 1998, and known threats, any monster that would have fought Godzilla without Futurian involvement like Destroya, have all been bested. Ghidorah and Ghidorah, for instance, were total unknowns to the Mickeys, thus they would have to rely upon M11. So Mickey Prime, the Mickey who helped create this timeline, is doing her best to acclimate and live a normal life, having done all she can. Also, just to clarify, Mickey and M11 both would have remained secret to the general public, even the Japanese Self-Defense Force. They absolutely do not want Futurian tech to fall into the wrong hands, resulting in the very future the Futurians wish to avoid, one that is dominated by Japan. The only ones who know of this secret are the Elias, Maul and Laura, and the current timeline Mickey, who is working with the Japanese Self-Defense Force as an advisor and liaison for her psychic institute. An institute whose children suddenly sense a grand evil unlike anything they've sensed before. Maul, Laura, even Belvera sense this approaching darkness. So when a meteor touches down upon the Earth and Grand King Ghidorah begins his destructive onslaught, it might come as a surprise that the general populace is more confused than they are in terror. See, for the better part of 6 years, King Ghidorah has basically been a protector for Japan. Now, yes, he was forced to do that via mind control, but the general populace and Japan's government don't know that. They just know that the Golden Protector hasn't killed anyone and saved thousands of lives from other threats. So when this imposter arrives, kidnapping the city's children and causing vast amounts of destruction, most citizens are just taken aback by the sudden whiplash of events. That shock, however, would not remain for the anti-Kaiju division. Jets engage the tyrant, but the metal vessels of war quickly disengage when 2 monstrous entities appear on radar. To aid humanity against this new threat, Rainbow Mothra and Rainbow Heisei King Ghidorah have arrived. For those curious about how Ghidorah got this new state, I would check out the past video. But before they battle, you're probably asking, how strong is this Rainbow King Ghidorah? This is essentially a King Ghidorah with his full potential unlocked. He certainly wouldn't be as powerful as Rainbow Mothra Leo, but he's not too far off, and would probably be strong enough to solo Ghidorah. Now that might sound impressive, however, the main issue the pair will quickly find is they can't break through Grand King Ghidorah's near impenetrable defense, the light barrier. Every beam or special energized attack thrown the terror's way is merely blocked by the light the attack creates. A few potent beams carry the power to part the shield, but the damage is anything but decisive. So under a torrent of gravity and anti-gravity beams, and watching as an Elias falls under the dragon's mind control, it is King Ghidorah who breaks away from the engagement. Mothra Leo gives pursuit of his ally, leaving a very smug and victorious Grand King Ghidorah to stand over his human hostages. So why the retreat? Well, King Ghidorah is not one to stay and fight a losing battle if he finds himself in one. He would probably quickly realize that Grand King Ghidorah's defense is near impregnable and come up with a better plan. Pure power can't win this fight, but Maul has an idea. And no, not time travel this time around. Keep in mind, Maul would understand how time travel works thanks to Mickey Prime and her time shenanigans. If Mothra Leo went back in time and killed Grand King Ghidorah, then all his future actions would be undone, including the stated feat of wiping out the dinosaurs. I don't think I need to explain why dinosaurs staying around would not only rewrite human history to an unknown degree, but more than likely erase human existence in its entirety. I mean, it is one way to save the children. If the children never existed, they can't die, can they? That morbid thought aside, what Maul does do is mentally connect with Mickey Prime. Now, Maul and Laura in part 2 heard of this alternate timeline and the power a modern Godzilla has. Maul also knows that a Godzilla of 5 years of age and fully grown now resides upon Adona Island. She pleads for Mickey Prime to convince him to come to their aid, only for the time traveler to reply that her psychic powers are gone. Her current variant's powers are also gone too, though she does offer an alternative. First, M11 could make his way to the dome, enter it, and assist the children from the inside. She also informs Maul that Mickey's other self can convince the children of the Institute to help, which could be another invaluable asset. Maul switches the telepathic call to the other Mickey, who agrees to have the children reach out to Godzilla. However, she has a favor to ask of the Elias. See, as I mentioned earlier, this Mickey acts as a liaison for the Self-Defense Force, mainly the Anti-Kaiju Division that is planning an operation against Grand King Ghidorah, though not the normal or standard running guns blazing kind. Right now, ground troops are already moving in to assault the Biodome, which houses the children. Distant recon shows that the children have hours, maybe less, before they are consumed by acid. However, the soldiers currently cannot attack for risk of being obliterated by the Hydra. For any type of rescue operation to occur, a major distraction is needed. And the only way to achieve such a distraction would mean the sacrifice of jets, tanks, planes, helicopters, lots of good men, and possibly their best anti-kaiju weapons in the Super X Mark II and the Super X Mark III. A staggering amount of losses for an attack that probably wouldn't do anything, considering they just watched Mothra and King Ghidorah fail against this new threat. This panic and reluctance is where Mickey's request comes into play. The Anti-Kaiju Division needs a distraction to save the children, and only two monsters can possibly create that opening: Mothra Leo or Ghidorah. Maul tentatively agrees and informs the two monsters of the plan. And of the two, it might come as a shock that King Ghidorah is actually the one that volunteers to become that distraction. Now, this might sound like a weird choice, but I'll explain my reasoning in a few. For now, King Ghidorah takes to the air to fight a second round with his interstellar ancestor. All the while, Mickey urgently relays what she knows to her higher-ups. Thus, Operation Transcending Fate is given the green light. Grand King Ghidorah senses the inferior's return and takes the bait, soaring skyward. This gives the ground forces of the Japanese Self-Defense Force the time they need. Troops tell the children to vacate a section of their bioprison before heavy ordnance begins to hammer the dome's walls. Tentacles lash out. Gunfire echoes through the trees. The battle for the dome begins while high above, a clash of three-headed titans reverberates through the heavens. Gold, red, and blue gravity beams duel for supremacy amidst the clouds while jets soar past, unloading their full arsenals which do bypass Grand King Ghidorah's light barrier. Just to be clear, the missiles aren't going to do anything to Grand King Ghidorah. However, the dogged tenacity of the pilots does spurn on King Ghidorah Heisei, because King Ghidorah isn't blind to the fact that humanity is dying around him, dying to help him and to ensure that those far below have a future. So it is with a vicious perseverance King Ghidorah keeps up the fight to protect Japan's future generation. And while King Ghidorah is outgunned here and can't use his own firepower that effectively, when the Hydra close the distance, the one advantage King Ghidorah does have in this fight becomes abundantly clear, which is his physical supremacy. While Grand King Ghidorah is a powerhouse in many ways, he doesn't really do anything impressive strength-wise except throw Mothra Leo. On the flip side, King Ghidorah matched Godzilla, who in their fight tossed the dragon's 70,000-ton body around with ease. While Grand King Ghidorah could be stronger, King Ghidorah Heisei has the feats to give him the definitive edge. So as this aerial contest of strength takes place, one which Grand King Ghidorah is assuredly losing to the larger earthbound Ghidorah, the invader's pride snaps. Gravity amplifies and the two plummet. After a cataclysmic impact and the dust settles, only Grand King Ghidorah remains standing. Now King Ghidorah is alive, he's just unconscious, though not for much longer. A golden glow emanates off the invader, forewarning the Rainbow Winged Guardian's death by... Yeah, that might need a play-by-play and a bit of context, not gonna lie. Now many of you may have noticed Mothra Leo did not engage Grand King Ghidorah, which may seem out of character, especially as children are involved, but he was needed to recruit Godzilla and Rodan, a job which King Ghidorah just wasn't suited for, not only because Maul could assist Mothra Leo in acting as a translator and getting the monsters on his side, but also because Mothra Leo is literally the fastest thing on Earth. Able to fly at Mach 15 or nearly 12,000 miles per hour, Mothra Leo could travel from Japan to Adona Island in something like 10 minutes. Then you can add another 10 minutes for Mothra to knock some sense into the overly aggressive Fire Rodan, and get on good terms with Godzilla. But even with all this, as you probably know, Godzilla would take days to travel from Adona Island to Japan. This is the primary reason Mothra Leo ventured to Adona Island, because he could travel from the island to Japan while carrying Godzilla literally in minutes. You can imagine the scene of Mothra and Batra carrying Godzilla, except Leo would be rocketing across the open ocean with Godzilla in tow. Also, Rodan can only fly at around Mach 3, so he'd probably be latched on to Godzilla's tail, just holding on for dear life as Leo speeds back to the battle. And when Grand King Ghidorah nears, I doubt Godzilla would want to be set down gently and make a nice introduction. So a monstrous missile he becomes, smashing into Grand King Ghidorah and creating a crater he'll need to pry himself out of. Thus, a new battle begins, with Grand King Ghidorah facing off against Godzilla, Rodan, and Mothra Leo. Apologies for the brief interruption, but by far most of you are not subscribed. To stay up to date with the newest scenarios, please consider doing so. Thank you. Now, ultimately, this does seem like a clear-cut victory for Grand King Ghidorah. I mean, he is the strongest monster on the field still, and he does have the light shield, which no one would be able to penetrate. Also, Leo wouldn't be at full strength here with one of his guardians, in this case Laura, still being under Grand King Ghidorah's control. But unlucky for Grand King Ghidorah, there are a number of factors here that his light shield just can't contend with. Near impenetrable? Yes, but the key aspect for its success is the Hydra scales reflecting the light of the beams directed at him. But how effective would those golden scales be after blood stains their exterior from vicious close quarters combat? After being warped by the sheer heat Godzilla's atomic ray can dish out. You know, a radioactive breath which not only melts diamond, but melted the exterior of a mech designed to combat said power? Compare those feats to a dragon that in his youth was implied to have been completely vaporized by magma. Faith in the barrier holding up in the long term, I do not possess. Another factor to consider is that Grand King Ghidorah just has no regenerative properties, unlike Godzilla, who is well suited for a battle of attrition. The Atomic Saurian can also use his superior strength if Grand King Ghidorah gets in close, or worse, unleash a devastating nuclear pulse to which the light shield would be helpless against. A war of attrition is not one Grand King Ghidorah can win, and as the experienced and intelligent world destroyer very quickly realizes this, he decides to focus on the weakest of the trio and knock out his enemies one by one, starting with Rodan. Anti-gravity beams engulf the Pteranodon, who is mortally wounded. The Hydra's attention then turns to Leo, who is blindsided by an earth-shattering blow. Both Mothra and Rodan are down for the count, leaving Godzilla alone under a barrage of gravity beams. Also in trouble are the Japanese Self-Defense Force troops, who despite their best efforts can't crack Ghidorah's biodome. As the children within flee rising acid, keeping one step ahead of the rising tide thanks to M11's aid, a final and calculating gamble is let loose. What is this gamble? Well, the Super X3 is ultimately going to make a strafe on the dome using its primary weapon. The reason why this is a gamble is because if the Super X3's weapon is too weak, it won't do anything. But if it's too strong and it ultimately freezes too much, it could seriously hurt if not kill the children on the inside. But with little time and Grand King Ghidorah putting on the pressure with Godzilla, the anti-Kaiju division decides to risk it all. And to the shock of many soldiers, the gamble pays off. Children run through the opening towards safety, with M11 leading the way. Now, I could see a whole bunch of troops just staring at this grown man amongst all these children and just wondering how he got sucked in, and him just saying, I don't know, I guess I'm a child at heart, shrugs. As M11 probably fails his charisma check, Laura and Belvera escape the dome, regrouping with Maul. And just as they prepare to help Godzilla, reinforcements arrive. Batra, having finally awakened and groggily deciding to help protect the Earth, bellows a cry of war against Grand King Ghidorah, while the Super X Mark III redirects to help. So the Elias trio join man and monster alike to...
Alright, what's going on here?
Oh, sir, I'm arrested.
What? Oh, you guys want me to explain why that happened. Okay, fine. That I can do. While the Elias trio can probably evade Ghidorah's beams, Batra is well outside the Dragon's League in regard to power, and nothing theoretically stops Ghidorah from turning the Super X crew against the Dark Moth. Also, while the Super X3 had shielding, the Super X Mark III is a technological downgrade compared to its original timeline variant, and thus could actually be obliterated pretty easily just like the Super X Mark II. All this to say that this could ultimately buy Godzilla maybe seconds, maybe minutes, before he's beaten down once more, allowing his agony-filled roars to fill the heavens. King Ghidorah drowsily awakens to the cries. Mothra Leo is far too weak to respond. But another is spurned into action, for it is these near-death wails that drive a mortally wounded Rodan to make the ultimate sacrifice. While in the original timeline there's a very good chance that Rodan just made his sacrifice not because he valued Godzilla's life or even cared so much about baby Godzilla, but more so out of spite towards Mecha Godzilla. Here, it is truly an attachment toward his sibling, built up after years and years and years of coexistence. Rodan vanishes into a cloud of gold radioactive specks, supercharging Godzilla. Red spiral beams level the playing field, blackening Ghidorah's hide to the point that his light barrier is mostly non-existent. Gravity beams match Godzilla's power, creating a beam clash to decide the battle's victor. Each side gives it their all, but Godzilla is quickly burning through his gifted reserves. Yet as Rainbow King Ghidorah lands behind the defiant lizard, does the dragon bite down upon Godzilla and bestow this final stand against Ghidorah, the very last of his reserves. Red, spiraling power gets a boost of golden energy, and with Ghidorah and Godzilla's powers combined, does Grand King Ghidorah vanish into the depths of oblivion. An unstoppable threat beaten, a threat like any other relegated to the past. But does this ultimately matter? While Grand King Ghidorah was indeed the worst threat to descend upon Japan, and celebratory cries ring across the world, it should be obvious that a greater threat could always appear, at any time. So why should the Mickeys or Elias or the monsters celebrate when the future they face is anything but certain? While the original Godzilla may no longer exist, that doesn't mean the hope and will to make tomorrow better does not. That whatever bleak darkness may descend, it will not find an apathetic world, but those still willing to fight for a better tomorrow. This no doubt would include an adult Godzilla Junior who would help protect the sacred gift that is humanity's tomorrow, a Mothra whose stewardship is truly eternal, and a rainbow-winged dragon who will always beam with hope, even when all might seem lost. And with What If King Ghidorah Heisei Turned Good Part 2 officially at an end, this marks the end of what is now my longest scenario. This is also the first timeline I've actually finished after starting What If Kaiju, and it certainly won't be the last. There are still plenty of interesting universes and timelines I've yet to explore, and there's also a few I'm going to be returning to very, very soon. But before I close the book on those worlds, the exploration of another paradoxically interesting and infuriating world awaits. Also, I want to give a massive shout out to Thomas Johnson, who made this Rainbow Heisei King Ghidorah versus Grand King Ghidorah banner. It truly is awesome. It's truly amazing. I'm so happy with how it came out. He's an awesome artist I've had the pleasure to work with for a few times now for Toho Kingdom and for the channel. So if you guys ever wanted a commission, he is definitely an artist I would recommend. But if you haven't already, remember to like and subscribe. I'm GrayShot151 and I'll catch you all next time. Until then, later.